Hey Pathways, what's going on? This is the Daily Dose. This week we're talking through parables. Now, one of the most intimidating things for a Christian is sharing the gospel with people. If you were to poll Christians, you'd find out very quickly that this is a terrifying thing for most. Now, in the Bible, we see all of these different moments where Jesus talks about how we spread the gospel, how we share the good news of Jesus with other people. And he actually tells a story in Mark chapter 4 that I want to read for you because I believe that this is a beautiful picture of what happens when we share the gospel. It starts in verse 3 where Jesus says this, "Listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell among the paths and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in rocky places where it didn't have enough soil, and it sprang up quickly, but because the soil was shallow, it died. When the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they were withered because they had no root." Verse 7 says that other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and it choked up the plants, so they did not bear grain. Verse 8 says this, "Still, other seed fell in good soil. It came up and grew and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times." What is Jesus trying to communicate here through this parable? What he's trying to tell us is this, that not every time you share the gospel will be fruitful. It's this beautiful picture of almost like this garden that you're beginning to grow plants in, right? You might be the person to plant the seed, but you might not be the one to reap the harvest. You might be the person to water the plant, but you might not be the one to reap the harvest. And you may be the person that doesn't plant it, doesn't water it, but you get to reap the harvest. See, it's important to note that when we're sharing the gospel with other people, we're not trying to save anyone. You and me alone, we actually don't have the ability to save anyone. Only Jesus does. I love there's an apologist, famous apologist by the name of Greg Koukl, and what he says is this right here. He says, be the pebble. In other words, when it comes to sharing your faith with other people, you don't need to radically alter their lives in that moment. You don't need to share the gospel in a 7-point presentation. You simply need to look at their worldview and put a hole in their worldview. Just a tiny little hole, right? Just a tiny little pebble. It's like my son Levi, I took him to the park the other day, and we were trying to leave the park, and he was standing there complaining. I was trying to figure out what was going on, so I went back, and he was pointing his foot, right? He's pointing his foot over and over again, and he's, ow, ow. And so I took off his boot, and I found out that there was a rock in there. See, it had been there for a while, and for a while he put up with it, but eventually he had to fix it. That's what you and I are called to do. That as we love people, as we share the gospel, as we live our lives according to the way that God has called us to live, that we become this pebble that it just sits in somebody's shoe until they have to know why. Here's my encouragement to you today. Today, be the pebble. Be the person that pulls people in to Jesus. This has been the Daily Dose. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.